Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Seed catalogs have a dizzying variety of options. Today we're going to see how to read the catalogs and find the plants that are right for your garden. Also, grapes are great to snack on and you can grow them in your garden too. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Dr. Lilia Kelly. Dr. Kelly is a retired Mississippi State Extension horticulture specialist, and Mr. D will be joining us later. All right, Dr. Kelly. Those seed catalogs are going to be rolling in, right?
Oh, man, I love it.
All right?
I love it.
But the thing about the seed catalogs, it's a lot of information.
It is.
So how do we read it?
Well, let me tell you first. It won't be long till your mailbox will be stuffed full of these beautifully photographed, glossy pages and pages of all these perfect plants. And I get to looking at them, and I'm supposed to be an experienced gardener. I get to looking at them, and I just go into some kind of trance and start making lists.
Right. I think we all do that.
Yeah, and I read somewhere that inexperienced gardeners or novice gardeners always order too many seed. Well, I'm here to tell you, experienced gardeners do it too.
Yeah, do it too.
You wind up with 5,000 seed of something, and But I want to talk first about why catalogs versus your nursery.
Okay, good.
Your local nursery. Good. And there's pros and cons for both.
Okay.
The catalogs, you get to see the picture of it in flower or maturity or whatever it looks like. You get to see the picture. And you also get more variety. You get a larger selection of things in these catalogs than you would probably at your local nursery.
Okay.
So at a nursery, though, you're going to get personal knowledge, local knowledge, and you're going to get larger plants. You're going to get bigger plants, than what you could order online, that kind of thing. And you may, based on the size, you may get a better deal than ordering a little shrub, through the mail or something. But thing is, though, that you can't find some things other than in catalogs.
Gotcha.
So, like I say, there's pros and cons.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
And also, there's all kinds of catalogs. I mean, all kinds. And I brought some examples today, and you can have seed catalogs that devote it to nothing but seeds. Then you have catalogs that are live plants, like perennials, and things like that. You have catalogs that are just heirloom, maybe, or you have a regional catalog that's just for the Southeast or wherever, which is good because that keeps us from ordering stuff that's not hardy, hopefully, and you get heirloom. There's heirloom plant catalogs. There's bulb catalogs. There's garden tools and accessories catalogs. I mean, you name it, everything's out. And there's combinations of all these too. And then you have the specialty plant catalogs like daylilies and irises and all this good stuff that's just that one plant. And you get hundreds of pictures of these wonderful looking plants. So, and you get new plant introductions. Every catalog that has plants, seeds, in the first few pages is their new plant introductions.
Which is always cool to see.
Oh, yeah.
I like those.
I mean, I really, you got to try something new every year, But there's a lot of new things you can look at in those new plant introductions. So it's always fun to learn about those.
Okay.
So, the next thing, I guess, is to talk about the information that you get.
Yeah, because it's a lot of information.
Oh, man,
sure.
it is a lot. Yeah. And some catalogs are better than others. And there's tables and charts. And one thing that I always look at, because when you go to the plant itself and you look at the plant description, whether it's a seed plant or something you're going to order a seed or it's a live plant, it'll give you a little description about it. And a lot of times they'll have these codes,
right?
Like a sun or an S or a P or something, and you're looking at it going, what does that mean? Well, you go to the front and they usually have a key that tells you, this is needs the sun, or this is a plant that's perennial or whatever,
Well, give us an example of one of the plant information of
Okay,
one of the
all right.
varieties of
well, let's
fruits
pick
that you have.
tomato.
Okay, let's pick
Because
tomato.
everybody grows tomatoes.
Okay.
Usually that's their first vegetable they're going to grow. So let's look at one called Mountain Fresh Plus as the description of this plant that we're going to order the seed. It's an F1 hybrid.
Okay.
You have yield in 75 days from planting. And then here's these codes we were talking about, using those. It is highly resistant to F2, N, and V. Well, you're going, what is that?
What is that?
Well, that's when we flip back over here to the big chart that tells you what all those codes stand for. It could be V for virus. There's just TMV is tomato mosaic virus. So you have to look over here to know that if you have trouble with diseases in your area, you definitely want to pick one that's resistant, and this will help you do that by reading these descriptions. It's able to tolerate cold and wet conditions. It's a big red tomato, produces attractive 8 to 16 ounce slicers with good flavor. Vigorous plants, plenty of leaf color. And you can buy 100 seeds for $4.75, or you could buy 1,000. So, and also you have this chart down here in your tomato section of this catalog. You have a comparison chart of the tomatoes.
Okay.
Like for disease resistance, their features, their firmness, days to harvest, all kinds of things. So that's a big help too, if you want to compare them. So it's always good to look at the key, and then you can understand the plant better and get more information so you can make a good decision.
Yes.
And not go off on a tangent and just order everything that looks pretty. So there's also, some of the seed catalogs have things like actually how to save the seed, which is a great thing that I didn't know was in some of these catalogs until you told me this is what I was going to talk about. And I got to pulling out all my old catalogs, and I said, man, I never saw that. This tells you how to collect the seed and how to save it. And it gives days to germination, what it needs for pollinators, the life cycle, all kinds of information.
That's a lot of good information.
So yeah,
because a lot of people are saving seeds these days,
Yeah,
So that's
so that's a good thing,
Yeah, that is good.
It tells you whether it's an heirloom or organic. There's just tons of info, and you just got to sit down and spend time and look at these things and study them, kind of like a textbook, really. Yeah.
Right.
Because they'll have germination rates, which is good. Germination soil temperatures, which is good. Because you'll think, man, I can't plant this now. The ground's too, direct seed stuff. So there's just there's recipes. I even found a salsa recipe that I didn't know was in there. So there's just tons of stuff. So take time and look at that, and then you make a more informed decision.
And the thing about taking the time is, you get these seed catalogs in the winter.
Yeah.
When there's not much going on,
you sit in front of the
landscape.
fire and you just get, like I say, your eyes just glaze over, or mine does. But the thing that I think people do is kind of go a little crazy, and we all do. We look at all these plants and wind up buying too much stuff, and I always encourage people to have a plan. Try to have a plan and say, okay, I'm going to grow tomatoes, and I'm going to grow this, and I'm going to grow that, and then figure out, because these magazines tell you how many plants you need and the yield. So if you've got a big family, you need these many plants. Or days to harvest, it tells you that. So figure out what you need and try your best to limit yourself to that.
That's the hard part.
Because, it really is. And I do it all the time. I always have too many seed, and I always carry them over from year to year, which is not, in most cases, the best thing to do because they lose their viability. So have a plan and then figure out how you're going to order it. Sometimes online is the best because it's fast. Phone, order blanks. Earlier the better.
Earlier the better.
Earlier the better, because they run out of these things early that are real popular, like the new selections. And if you order early, you're going to get the best selection, and you're going to get some early bird discounts from these catalogs, a lot of them,
Discounts
to
are
encourage
good.
you, to order early.
Okay.
So go wild.
Yeah, go wild.
Yeah.
But have a plan.
Yeah, have a plan, but you can go a little wild too.
A little wild. Now that's good stuff, Doc. Especially now with the many new gardeners that are out there. You better. Order early.
So it's a good idea to utilize a lot of these magazines, and if you want to go to your local nursery after utilizing all of these and see if they have the plants, these are good sources, like I say, to help you figure out what you want and if it fits what you need in your climate.
Good deal, Doc. It's good information. Yeah, grab that and send it in front of your fire. You'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Thank you
Hot
much.
chocolate.
Yeah, hot chocolate. Yeah, that would be good. Thank you. That was good. Ornamental.
Ornamentals, yeah, that can mean a lot of things,
Okay.
but in our gardening industry and in the gardening world, that refers to plants that are used for decorative purposes in landscapes and around buildings and yards. It can be specimens, it can be even cut flowers, you know, or house plants even. When you encompass the whole word ornamentals, you know, that's what we talk about. But now in the industry, you know, the guys that grow the plants, you know, the ornamentals to them are more the woodies, like shrubs, trees, you know, those kind of things. But it can refer to perennials as well, the herbaceous. You know, so that's just depending on who you're talking to. But it's decorative plants that are used in our landscapes.
All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about grapes.
About grapes.
All right.
Okay. I guess first thing let's talk about is the similarities that pretty much all grapes have in common.
Okay.
They need a fairly high pH, you know, up around 6 pH, 6 to 7 pH is good for all grapes. And the grapes we're talking about are the bunch type and the muscadine types. And there's several bunch types out there, the American hybrids, the French hybrids, and those kind. But they all, when you're planting them, the best time to plant them is in the late winter, early spring.
Okay.
Don't plant them too early. You don't want to put them out there before you have you know, several real hard freezes. You know, here in the Memphis area, I'd say, you know, March, you know, late March, mid to late March is a good time to plant in the Mid-South area here. That is also the best time to prune them. You can go a little bit later on the pruning. When you prune them, if they're bleeding, a lot of people get concerned when they're bleeding, but that's not a problem. Just the juice running out of the plant is not a problem. It's better to prune them when they bleed a little bit than to prune them, you know, too early or in the fall. You do not want to prune them in the fall. You don't want to plant or prune within 48 hours of a hard freeze. If a hard freeze is forecast within the next 48 hours, wait until after that freeze occurs.
Okay.
And then get on out there and plant and prune.
So what's the difference between grapes and muscadines, though?
A muscadine is a type of grape.
Okay.
A muscadine is a grape, but the muscadine is a type of grape.
Okay.
And the muscadine types are types that do well in the summertime. They're more native to a lot of the country because, I mean, muscadines are native to here in the Memphis area. There are wild muscadines growing on Mud Island. Of course, there's also a lot of non-native plants growing around also. But in the South, the muscadine types tend to do better, in my opinion. And there are several different muscadine types out there. Let me go over some of the varieties there.
Okay. All right.
And these are varieties that have been around for a long time. Okay. I was recommending these back when I worked in Mobile County back in the 80s and 90s. But Hunt, Scuppernong, Carlos, Pride, Nesbitt, Golden Isle, Triumph, Magnolia, Cowart. Those are all muscadine varieties that have been around a long time. You know, I mentioned Scuppernong.
Yeah.
Some folks think that all muscadine, they call all muscadines Scuppernongs. Well, Scuppernong is just one variety of muscadine. It's a female bronze variety. Muscadines come in either black, they're either dark colored or bronze.
Okay.
Now there are there are two types of muscadines. The female types require cross-pollination. They require a perfect flowered type to pollinate them. The perfect flowered type, on the other hand, is completely self-fruitful. So of the ones I mentioned, 1, 2, 3 of them are females, and the rest of them are perfect flowered types. So, but let me go back and I'll talk a little bit about some of the other types of grapes, bunch types. They're used for wine, or they're used table grapes, you know, for eating. Some do better for jellies and juices and things like that.
Are they considered the bunch grapes, are they perfect flowered, female flowered, or most of
The
them
bunch
self-fruitful?
they're all self-fruitful.
They're all
so-
self-fruitful.
So that would mean
Okay.
they have.
You don't have to worry about getting.
Right.
You don't have to
That's
worry
good.
about
You can have
pollination.
one vine.
That's
and it
right.
would
You can have one
set
vine. And
That's
you can
good.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Small yards, you know.
Right. And that is
Yeah,
something
homeowners,
that's
they want to
Yeah.
try it,
Uh-huh.
right?
and that is something that's important to consider, because if you grow muscadines, it's recommended that you plant them 20 feet apart.
Yeah, they take a lot of space.
That because they'll have a 10-foot runner, and you'll have to
Nip it back.
prune it to
Right.
10 feet because it's going to want to go 20 feet, and so you'll have within the row 20 feet apart on muscadines, and then you want your rows 12 to 15 feet apart. So it takes a lot of space if you're growing muscadines.
Yeah.
Not real good in a small, zero, backyard, a small backyard. The bunch type grapes don't require quite as much space. You can put them, 8 to 10 feet within the row, and because they're not quite as aggressive as the muscadine types, you still probably need to leave, 10, 12 feet between the rows. But another thing that they have in common is they all fruit on current season's growth that came out of 1-year-old wood.
Okay.
And so it's important to prune them. Don't wait 3 or 4 years, especially if you have the muscadine types that are very, very, they grow a lot. They grow fast. It's important to prune them annually. And you can take off most of last year's growth. You can prune them back to 2 or 3 buds. Just follow that long runner all the way back and have 2 or 3 nodes or 2 or 3 buds
Right.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
cut it off. And so you'll leave a little stub there.
Yeah.
And so that's your 1-year-old wood. And the growth that comes out of those buds will be the current season's growth that you'll fruit on. Now, if you go all the way back to the main stem, then the new growth that comes out is going to be coming out of what?
Two.
Yeah,
older
that's
wood,
right.
2 or
It's
3-year-old wood.
fruit,
Right.
Yeah.
Will it fruit? No.
Yeah.
You will have a beautiful vine. It'll be big and it'll be green and it'll do real well. So it's important to leave a little bit of
little
last
bit,
year's
okay.
growth when you prune them back. There are a lot of different trellis systems that you can use for grapes. You can have one of the simplest is a single wire, which is a post with a single wire going across the top. You can have a double wire system, which has a single wire going across a post that's like 5 feet tall, and then about a couple of feet lower, another wire under there, and you have a double wire system. There's a Geneva double curtain, which kind of looks like my mother's clothesline.
Yeah.
It's really got 3 wires. It's got wires going out on the end of the Geneva double curtain system, and then one going along the top of the post to kind of. But that's the Geneva double curtain, and it's probably the most popular. It exposes more of that plant to sunlight than any other type.
Than just doing the straight up
Right.
couple of wires.
Right. You can
Yeah.
plant your plants and put in the trellis system after you plant them if you want to, or you can go ahead and put your trellis system in first, and then. But you're going to have a trellis system.
Got to
for
have a
any of
trellis
your grapes.
system. Are there any major diseases of grapes that we need to know about?
There are. Probably the number one disease that if you grow grapes, you need to go to your local extension office and get the home orchard spray
Right.
guide. It'll have a section on diseases. And black rot is by far the most common fungal disease. It shows up as a coppery spot on the leaf, and it causes the grapes to turn black and shrivel up, and they're not any good. And that's probably the most common problem. It affects both bunch type and muscadine types, but probably more so on the bunch types than on the muscadine type. The bunch type, some of them are susceptible to a disease called Pierce's disease, which spends part of its life cycle on a grape and part of it on a peach tree. It's phony peach on peach trees. It's rickettsia type organism spread by leafhoppers.
Okay.
And once they get it, you just got to take them out.
Wow.
The plants do not survive either phony peach on a peach tree or the Pierce's disease in grapes. Muscadines do not get that.
Good.
But and several of the newer varieties of the bunch types are resistant to Pierce's disease. They have resistance to that. But powdery mildew is another problem, and your fungicide that you go by if you put your grapes on a spray schedule should take care of those kind of things. Insects.
Yeah, that's going to be the next question.
Insects not normally much of a problem on grapes. I'm sure a stink bug if it goes.
Oh, sure.
Sure. But
Also Japanese beetles.
Japanese beetles, things
yeah,
like that.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah,
they
can,
eat everything.
That's
can
right.
be a problem.
Yeah.
That's right.
Again, nothing preventative that you would need to do on grapes if you have a problem. You can go out there and try to deal with it. Scout. Keep an eye on them.
What about any critters running around there?
Not
Deer
not
or
aware.
anything like that?
Not like strawberries that have
Okay.
critters that get out there and work on them, and deer that walk across them and mess up the plastic and eat them and all that. I'm sure deer,
Probably.
if you have a very high population, would work on you a little bit, but just not a lot of problems
Okay.
with grapes with insects and critters and things like that.
Oh, we appreciate that, Mr. D. Good stuff. Appreciate that. So cherry trees have many problems. If you can see here, this oozing, right, which is red, kind of honey in color, is called gummosis. Gummosis is an indicator that this plant is under stress. So that can be from insect pests or it could be from mechanical damage. Gummosis is usually associated with cankers. So what you would need to do is actually prune out where you may have a canker. That's going to be difficult to do a tree this size. So cut out the canker if you possibly can, and the next best thing to do is make sure that you can keep the plant as stressless as possible. So again, gummosis. All right, here's our Q&A segment. You ready?
Yep.
Great questions we have here. Here's our first via email. I just found about a dozen of these securely suspended in a juniper tree. Are these bagworms or something else? This is Carl. All right, Mr. D, I think this might be something else, right?
They're not bagworms. They're not
right.
bagworms, that's for sure. I know what a bagworm is. They're not bagworms. But yeah, tropical tittenweb spider, I think, or orb spider is Certophorus citricola, I think is what this critter is. It's came into the United States in about 2000 and it's spread through some of the southern states. So I assume that Carl is from somewhere in the south.
Right.
But they are a real severe pest in South America and in citrus and coffee plantations because the webs are so thick that it actually can block photosynthesis. It can, mess up the leaves. But that's what it is.
Yeah, just the egg sacs, right?
So
Yeah, those are the egg sacs.
Should you get rid of it?
Well,
Could be beneficial.
they're
right?
probably a beneficial insect unless they are so thick that they're blocking, cutting off the photosynthesis of the plant
Well, it
that
says
they're on.
only a dozen,
But
so that's not
they're on a juniper. Well, a dozen's not enough.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do anything with them. Of course, those egg sacs, I don't know how many little
Yeah,
spiders are
that's
in
gonna
those
be- that's
eggs.
the question.
You got a dozen of those and let them all hatch out, and
Right.
Couple of
assuming a half 50% survival rate. Yeah, so you just kind of keep an eye on them. But you may have to do something in the future.
Orb
but-
weaver.
But maybe not.
Weaver.
Right.
Yeah, how about that? So yeah, it's a pretty picture. Yeah, so thank you for the picture, Carl. That's-
And since they are tropical natured, perhaps the cold winter will help us on that. I don't know how well insulated that little egg sac is,
Yeah.
but 17 below might take them out.
a
Zero.
good Okay. Thank you, Carl, for that question. We appreciate that. Here's our next via email. I would love to know what kind of weed this is that is taking over our grass. I know part of the problem is Creeping Charlie, but I don't know what the weed in the middle is. I know we need a weed killer of some sort. What is this rascal weed?
I like the way
I like
you said
that,
it.
rascal weed.
Yeah.
All right.
We all
Anybody
got
want to jump out
rascals
there?
in our name.
Anybody
Yeah.
think they know what that rascal?
Yeah, I know what it is.
What is it?
It is a fleabane.
Ah, it's flea bane.
Yeah, Erigeron is the genus, and yeah, they're coming up now and doing their little thing. And this, kind of in our part of the world, they're more biennial, but they're pretty wildflowers.
They
But
are.
they
Pretty
can,
late yellow blooming,
yeah,
don't they?
yeah,
Pollinators like them?
yeah,
so
yeah,
they're pretty
yep.
good.
And they grow a lot on the roadsides. They have this pretty white, daisy-looking flower with a yellow center, and But in your yard, if you don't like them, you know, they're really easy to hoe up or pull up.
Just pull them up.
Yeah, they are real easy to pull up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got them in flower beds, and I've tried to kind of thin them out a little bit. Because they're coming up this time of year, you know, doing their little rosette.
Right.
So
The basil rosette.
that's what it is. It's a flea bane.
It is a flea
A
bane.
Ridgeron, yeah.
You like that, Mr. D? Flea
There are
bane?
some, yeah, and some of these flea bane are resistant to glyphosate.
Oh, really? So yeah, get the hoe.
Some of them aren't. But I would think the 2,4-D combinations, Weed Be Gone, 2,4-D, MCPA, and dicamba
Dicamba, right.
combinations you'd ought to get Creeping Charlie too.
Yeah,
While he's at it.
Yeah, because Creeping Charlie looked very good, didn't
Kill
it?
all the weeds, you don't have any grass though. It's the way my yard would be.
Mine too. I live out in the woods and I don't have any grass. The army, what little I had, the army worms got this summer.
So they got that up. How about that? Yeah, so yeah, flea bane. So thank you for that question. That's that rascal weed that's out there.
Yeah,
I like
rascal,
that.
I like that.
Rascal, yes, beautiful weed. Yeah, nice pictures. All right, so Mr. D, Dr. Kelly, that was fun. Thank you so much. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. Winter is a great time to plan next year's garden. If you need help and advice, head on over to familyplotgarden.com. We have 1,400 gardening videos and all sorts of information to help you. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.